Good morning. Happy Monday, everybody. Hopefully people can chat with us. How are you doing, Rachel?
I'm great. Well, it's afternoon time, right? It's morning here, but
yes, it's just 12 o'clock lunchtime here. So already well into Monday, but like it matters. It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, days don't mean anything anymore. So
literally, like yesterday, someone was like, wait, it's Easter and it's Sunday. It's just like so weird. The world is weird.
What is time? Hi, Tiffany. Hi, Erica. Hi, Shannon. Yay. Can I just say, so we're a few days into this now. We're kind of getting our groove. We're talking about food. We're, trying to get people to engage. And I've just been so happy with how excited and interested and helpful everyone's been. Like everybody, amazing mug, by the way. That's really cute.
Can you read it? Is it backwards or?
No, wait, I said you're the good kind of fat. Exactly. Avocados are my favorite. Yeah, but just, people's willingness to share stuff and talk about their struggles and their challenges and what's working and just like share their food and all the little like sort of mini threads that people have been creating themselves. Like that's exactly what this is about. So that makes me very happy.
Yeah, same. And even like the first day when we post a picture of your meal, just seeing everybody's meals and like what they're talking about, I was like, wow, I got like 20 more ideas for food, for like different meals that I can incorporate. And I was talking to my sister because she's in the challenge too, and she was saying the same thing. But it's like you just the interaction, just posting and like seeing what other people are doing, it like sparks, different things. Yeah. So that's exactly what you said. That's the whole point of this group, is to just connect and see what everybody else is doing. So
yeah, it's awesome. So we kind of threw this this live in that we weren't planning, based on some of the questions and challenges that kept kind of coming up over and over again in the group. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the cool things about the flexibility of this community that we've started, is that if something comes up and it seems to be something that like everybody is dealing with, like let's get on and chat about it. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I guess I just wanted to remind people to, for anybody who hasn't been paying attention, that one of the things we're also doing is there's a files folder page in the group where you've been uploading a ton of stuff like meal plans, and we put the schedule of events there. So anybody can go. It's kind of hard sometimes to follow all the threads on the page because we're doing so much. So if there's anything that we're uploading, like it's going to be like any kind of tutorials or recipes or pages or anything, it's going to go on that files page, so that you can go and download whatever from there. So I just wanted to remind people of that.
Yeah. And then also on that note, there is also the, I'm looking at my other screen because I have the group pulled up, but it's called Popular Topics. And if you look at it on your desktop, it'll be on the right side of the group. If you look at it on your phone, it should be like the first thing that pops up. So I've kind of been trying to categorize things as I post them. So if you're interested, like for example, the meal plans are all in one category. So you can click that post topic and you'll have all the meal plans. Same with like the nutrition and the live sessions. I've been like trying to put them all in categories. So check those out. And then one other thing I just want to mention too, I meant to mention this in the beginning. I think I mentioned it in the welcome email, but if you want to get notifications for the group, especially like when we post, if you like right underneath the picture, if you're on your desktop, you can turn on the notifications and you can like choose which notifications you want to get. I just put them on from everybody because I want to get notifications every time someone posts. If you just want to get like the top post or whatever, you can turn that on. So that's just another thing to be aware of if you are new to Facebook groups.
Cool. Okay. All right. So as always, we're going to answer questions when they come up, but let's just start with sort of the big topic, the challenge and struggle that pretty much everybody, and not just in this group, but everybody on the planet has. So I think it's a good conversation for us to have. And it's sort of centered around, I kind of feel like there's sort of two pieces of this like larger conversation. And one of them is maintaining good habits during times of stress or upheaval or quarantine, and seeing your regular healthy eating habits or schedules being sort of tossed in the air and you don't know what's going on. So there's sort of that part of it. And then there's the comfort, boredom, sadness eating that people do all the time during times of stress or change. That seems to be maybe ramping up during this time because we're home, we're close to our fridges, we're stressed out, all of those things. So that seems to be something that is coming up a lot with people. And I think people are kind of just asking questions about maybe tools or how to look at it or how to approach it. And I think it's a really big conversation. So it's almost tough to know really where to start. Mm-hmm. But I think that one of the things that I kind of wanted to say based on what I've been seeing from our group, and you tell me what you think about this, is that I really feel like this group is a bunch of really smart, enthusiastic women. And for the most part, when it comes to stress eating or falling off the wagon with your plan, I really feel like it's not a lack of knowing what to do. It's more just feeling like you are sort of out of control or giving up control of what you know you should be doing. So it's not really like, I don't know if we really have to talk about like what to do. You know what to do. You know what's going to make you feel better. You know what's going to make you feel good immediately and feel worse later. Like we all know what we're supposed to be doing. It's feeling like we're almost out of control and we're doing the stuff we shouldn't be doing despite ourselves. And that's kind of like the deeper sort of conversation. So
exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just keep coming back to the idea that like, it's not like habits, healthy routines, healthy schedules, discipline, all of these things we talk about, enacting these habits in our life so that they aren't decisions anymore. They're just a part of our life. Right.
Yeah.
And that takes work, and it takes a lot of work on the outset. And then it's less and less work to maintain the longer you kind of keep up that consistency. But what I keep coming back to when I'm struggling with this is just really internalizing that these healthy habits and schedules and plans that we think about and work so hard on, they are literally for times like this. Like you've heard it before, but you know, it's easy to be on top of things and to be really on the ball when times are easy, of course, right? When you have low stress, when everything's going your way, when everything's great, of course you can keep up your schedule. Everything's A-okay, right? But it's times like these when we really need to be healthy and feel good and feel in control. That's when the habits are more important. So those days and times and weeks and situations where you feel like, oh, things are uncertain and crazy, so I guess I'll just throw all my other habits out the window and just YOLO, like eat whatevs.
Yeah.
This is the exact time when you don't do that. Like it's the whole like when times get tough, the tough get going kind of situation. Like this is when you really want to double down on whatever your schedules and your habits are. So that's kind of like my initial thought.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I think that the times when you're not stressed and you're not struggling, those are the times that you have to build up those habits. And that's what, like, I think is super important. Obviously we're in this time right now, but I think you can still do that and focus on that. And I would say like the one thing to start off with, if you're struggling, if you feel exactly like you said, if you feel like you know what you're supposed to do, you know how you're supposed to execute, but you're just not doing it because you feel so like just out of whack. I guess that's the easiest way to say it, because I've been feeling it myself too over the past few weeks. The biggest thing that has helped me and has helped a few people, like some of the clients I work with, is just having structure and making sure that you can like follow along, even if it's just like, okay, today is Monday, right? Everybody says, start on Monday, whatever. Even if you didn't start today, plan your day tomorrow and like plan everything that you're going to do, write it out. The article you posted yesterday, which we can talk about, that had a bunch of really good tips in it, but just start with one day. It doesn't have to be like, okay, I'm going to plan my entire week and stick to this for the entire week. Why not plan tomorrow, right? Plan what you're doing, time block, right when you wake up in the morning, what are you doing? And then push that out throughout the entire day. When are you eating? Like, what are your meal times going to be? What are the foods that you're going to eat in that meal time? Especially for right now. I don't always recommend this, like for normal life. Like I recommend, it depends on your goals and it depends on you. But like, if you are, you want to eat when you're hungry and focus on that type of thing. But if you're someone who's struggling right now with not understanding that and not like your body not knowing, when you're actually hungry or not because you are under stress, that is when setting your meal times, setting the food that you're going to eat in that meal times is so important. So what I would say, like, plan that out for tomorrow and just make sure that you wake up tomorrow and you have your schedule for just tomorrow. If you can get through that schedule and hit everything that you, that you plan to do, mostly with like the meal times and like how you structure your day, and you get to the end of the day and you like checked off, okay, I ate at this time when I said I was going to do it. I ate this meal when I said I was going to eat it, or whatever. You will feel so accomplished by the end of the day, just looking back at that one day and saying, wow, I did it. Like I was able to just stick with that one day, stick with the schedule. And that's going to give you momentum, right? That's going to give you momentum into the next day. And that's going to build the structure. And I think that's the biggest thing with the article you posted yesterday. It's like, we are so out of our structure right now and our normal habits and our daily habits that we have to implement some type of system to get back into it. And I think like they mentioned in the article, and a lot of people were saying how they learned the domino effect. I think that's super important, because if you can get that domino effect going and you can just start with one day, or even half a day, like just plan out half a day, whatever you feel comfortable with. But it needs to be something where you can literally write it out, have it on paper or have it on your calendar, have those time blocks, and just wake up and say, okay, I'm following this day or this even half a day, whatever it may be. And you will, trust me, you'll feel so accomplished and you'll just want to keep going. So
yeah,
that's my advice.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think another thing that I talked about, I think maybe we talked about it with Gabrielle earlier, but it's the idea of replacing bad or less optimal habits with new ones. And I think that that's really important for people to remember, because especially when we maybe have more time on our hands, or we're feeling more restless because we don't have as much to do or whatever. And a lot of times we fill that void with food and with eating, and eating when we're not hungry. But any kind of habit, if your habit was smoking or I don't know, something else bad, whatever.
Drinking. Someone mentioned they want to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And we can get into that. But the idea of removing something that was really serving a purpose, even if it wasn't good, like if you're drinking to numb the pain or eating to numb the pain or doing whatever to numb the pain, it's doing something for you, even if it's not, ideal or healthy. So to just remove it and be like, okay, I'm just going to try to soldier on without it, that's not really how human physiology or psychology works, right? So it's very important to have a plan for what to replace this like sort of negative thing you want to change with something better. So if it's eating a unhealthy snack in the afternoon because you're sitting around and you're feeling restless and crappy and you just want to comfort yourself, to instead of just removing it, think about a plan, think about something else to do. So maybe you start prepping healthy protein, high protein snacks. Maybe you decide like that 3 o'clock slump when you're feeling weird, like that's when you schedule your call with your friends, or that's when you like do your 20-minute learning a language or whatever it is that you're doing during quarantine to, keep your brain going. I used to like roll my eyes at people who were like, oh, I eat too much ice cream, so I just replaced it with cauliflower ice cream. And you're like, that's not a replacement, dude. Like, don't kid yourself. But you don't always have to replace everything with food or with something that's going to make you feel like you're settling, right? Because if you're eating for comfort or boredom, not because you're hungry, you don't need to replace that food with a healthier food because you don't actually need the food. So think about something else that's going to make you feel rewarded or productive or happy or settled or calm, like do some breathing work, some meditation, take a hot bath or something instead, but plan that ahead of time so that you don't wait until you're hungry or stressed out or bored and you're like, oh, what do I do? Of course, you're going to go grab the chips, right? So that's part of the structure that you're talking about is when you're having your tough time, plan ahead for something to replace that bad habit with, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, I completely agree with that. And then I would say also just going back to like what I posted yesterday with those hunger hacks and those healthier options. I think personally for me, especially when it's like late at night, I've always been a nighttime snacker, like stressed or not, like that's like, it's just always happened. And like you said, I've tried to go cold turkey. I've tried to replace it with things and certain things work at different times. And in certain situations, I know that it's like, I like need something. And so that's why having things like those electrolyte, like the electrolyte Jello, which in itself is like a beneficial food. So it's not like you're going out and getting Jello packets from the grocery store that have like dye in them and just like crappy stuff. For example, that electrolyte gel recipe is like, I use 100% or not 100%, grass-fed gelatin, right? Which is good for you. And electrolyte powder, which is a natural, I use Ultima Replenisher, which has no dyes or anything. It's made from natural, like fruit ingredients, stuff like that. You can check out the label. But anyway, with that being said, it's like I'm replacing it with something that is beneficial to me, rather than it being something that is, maybe it's still low calorie, but it's still crap, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the first thing you should do is exactly what you said. Like, think about if you are actually hungry or if you're bored, and if you can replace it with something like taking a bath or going for a walk or having a cup of tea or something like that. Like, that's probably the best thing. And if you find yourself not being able to do that, or if you try to do that and then after you do that, you go get the bag of chips, then I would say, okay, instead of a bag of chips, maybe you have that Jell-O on hand or those gummies on hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's just kind of my 2 cents for that.
Yep. I like it. I also want to mention quickly, because people are talking about varying degrees of this emotional eating, like just a reminder that you are not alone, because literally everyone does it. There's nobody in the world who hasn't used food or booze or something as a coping mechanism. So don't feel like you are weak. Everybody that you've ever seen on Instagram with a 6-pack, everybody that sells nutrition programs, both of us here talking to you right now, literally everyone has done it, and we all backslide and it happens. So take some comfort in that. And also some comfort in the fact that, yes, you can also do something about it. But the one thing that I did want to mention here is that there is a difference between the universal human tendency to use food and alcohol occasionally or in some ways as a comfort. And then if you actually are dealing with an addiction or a truly disordered, dysfunctional attitude towards eating. And again, this can be a bit of a gray area, right? Because when you think about, I just dropped my lip gloss. When you think about, people that you would consider to be like, for example, bulimic or anorexic, or people who have clearly defined eating disorders that need to be medically treated for it. And then you think those are one group of people, and then the rest of us are another group of people. There's actually like a really wide range and gamut in what we consider dysfunctional, right? And that some people can absolutely deal with this on their own, or deal with it through like this kind of resource, or sort of whatever, can kind of deal with it in a less severe sense, I suppose. And then there are people who are going to need more help and more assistance that we are not capable of doing, and that's outside of the scope of what we can offer here. But one of the things that I wanted to just mention, and I'll put this in the show notes in the comments,
podcast live.
in the comments, is somebody that you might want to follow and look into, another doctor friend of mine. And Rachel, I don't know if I've introduced you or if you've met her yet. Her name is Dr. Elly Michelle. Do you know about her?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll do like an intro because she's amazing. You should definitely have her on the podcast. She's fantastic. But she is a naturopathic doctor. She's based on the West Coast, and she focuses on women's health and women's hormones, but also addressing disordered eating. And she has shared, actually on my podcast, I'll post a link to it. She's shared about her own personal history with disordered eating, and healing through that and working through that. And she really can speak really intelligently to being able to maybe tell the difference between we're just sitting around and bored and eating and then feeling guilty about it, versus this is like a serious problem that I really need to get external help to address. So I just wanted to mention that like there's, this is a very complicated issue, that it's really layered. And I'm not saying that anybody out there needs to go get medical attention or not, or whatever. I'm just saying that there's a lot going on here potentially for some people. And maybe it's outside of our ability in this venue to kind of like address all of those levels. So, yeah. But Elly is amazing, and she does telemedicine and teleconsulting and stuff. So if you check her out and you think that that's something you might want to explore further, you can definitely do that, and I can introduce you and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to kind of put that there too.
Yeah. And to piggyback off that too, it's like, There's nothing, well, first of all, exactly what you said, like we can't give medical advice, especially when it comes to this, and eating disorders and all of that, that is still like medical, right? That's considered medical. Like, so all the things we're talking to right now are just things that we've experienced for ourselves or have seen with our clients or things like that. And just kind of not giving any, concrete advice or telling you should be doing this or you should be doing that. That's not what this is. But then going past that also, it's also realizing that it's okay to ask for help. And that is something that I struggled with personally for a long time, especially as being a nutrition coach myself and, strength conditioning coach myself. Like it took me a long time to personally ask for help. But when I did, and I got my own help when it came to following through with my nutrition or my exercise or whatever mental stuff too as well, it completely changed my life. And I think that is something that everyone needs to take a step back and say, okay, like the definition of insanity is doing something over and over again and not seeing results, right? And so if you feel like you've been doing things over and over again and you're just going back to square one, spinning your wheels, take a second and be like, okay, should I continue to be doing this on my own or should I seek some help? Because that's the kind of the line where it comes to, okay, I'm actually going to be progressing towards my goals if I can ask for that help and have someone there who can help me with that versus continuing to regress and continue to spin my wheels and go in circles. Yes. So you have to just also think about that and think about like where you're personally at and all that. So that's just something I want to mention.
That's a really good point. And that goes along with the idea of like insanity, doing the same thing, expecting a different result, also hits home very strongly for, I think, a lot of women with regards to the guilt we feel when we mess up. And I've seen a lot of people making this comment, and dude, I have done this a zillion times. You eat garbage and then you beat yourself up over it, right? And again, that's a very human reaction because you feel like you did something wrong, you made a mistake, and now you feel bad about it, right? But I remember reading, and that's probably been the biggest change in my attitude towards food, has been working very hard to mindfully get over the guilt part of it, take the emotion out of it. And I remember reading the book Wired to Eat by Rob Wolf, and I've had him on the podcast as well. I can put that somewhere. And he wrote, or he said it a couple times, but for some reason, the blatant way he put it, it really stuck with me, where he was saying like, there is no morality attached to the food decisions we make with regards to junk versus healthy food. Food isn't, ethically better than other food, and you choosing to eat junk food doesn't have any reflection on your moral character. And like the language we've put around eating crappy food, like we're cheating when we eat something, or we ate something bad and we're weak for doing it. Like we've created that narrative. That's not a real thing. Like if we're all bad, weak cheaters for eating junk food, then everyone on the planet is, right? So those words mean nothing anymore. So when I am able to eat something, and even mindfully ahead of time say, look, I'm going to eat something that's total sugar junk because I really want to, I've thought about it, it's worth it for me, and then you don't feel guilty. And they've literally, like from a pragmatic scientific standpoint, they have literally done studies that have shown that the way you feel about the food you're eating affects how you use it and metabolize it. So if I eat a cupcake and I'm like, oh man, I'm such an asshole for eating this cupcake. Like this is the worst. And then I'm eating it. Yeah. And then you eat a cupcake and you're like, I've been ready for this cupcake for a week. I am so excited about this thing. I feel so good about it. Our bodies are going to react to it differently. Like that's a thing. So if you're going to be a human being and sometimes eat less than optimal things, the best thing you can do is enjoy the treat that you're giving yourself and not beat yourself up over it. Because again, from a scientific point of view, we all know that this negative reinforcement and beating yourself up does not help. You can't expect to invest time and energy on improving something that you don't love or have respect for. So if you think that you're a lazy, useless, whatever, weak, that's not the kind of language that a trainer would give to their client to do better, right? So why would we tell that to ourselves? So anyway, long-winded rant about just like, we really gotta like mindfully try to get over the guilt. And if you eat something and you do feel guilt, let's try to get over it more quickly. Let's say, look, I'm a human being. I did it. It tasted good at the time. Now let's move on. Because what actually makes that decision bad is if it spurs you into not working out because now you feel crappy. I might as well eat more because I just ate that thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's how the cycle continues. So instead, I ate this thing. It tasted good. Probably wasn't the best thing. All right, let's move on with our lives because that's what you got to do, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. 100%. I wish I had a microphone that I could just drop because everything you said was like, microphone.
Yeah. Okay.
Always.
should we maybe look at some questions? I think
let's
come in. Okay. Hold on. I'm just going to go back up to the top here. Everybody's saying hi and nice. Okay. So Jill is asking about eating smaller, more frequent meals better for improving metabolism and weight loss. What do you think?
So personally, I think that it's not so much about the metabolism and weight loss. It's more just adherence wise. So if you're someone who, say you have, you have a goal in mind and you're trying to stick to that goal or whatever it may be, if you feel like you can adhere more to the foods you're eating, and maybe if it's a specific calorie goal you have throughout the day, if you feel like having 5 to 6 meals a day or 4 to 5 meals a day helps you adhere to that day better and go through your day feeling good and energized and all of that. And if it comes to workouts and stuff like that, if you feel good with that, then I would say then you should be doing that. If you are someone who feels better, maybe having 3 larger meals, there's some people who don't, there's a lot of different science and opinions on this, but if you have, smaller meals, sometimes you don't get that fullness factor. You don't feel full if you're having just a small meal. And so maybe you tend to eat more right after that meal, rather than if you have, say, like 3 big meals a day and you feel satisfied and full after that. If that helps you adhere to what you're doing, then I would say you're a 3-meal person per day. If it's 2 meals or 1 meal, it all comes back to how it makes you better adhere to the plan that you are trying to adhere to. More so than it comes down to, this study said that, eating 5 meals a day, 6 meals a day, makes you lose weight faster. Or this study said that I should eat OMAD 1 meal a day because I'll lose weight faster. It's, in my eyes, it's not that. It's about you and what you can adhere to. And then also realizing that that's going to change over time. So you also need to realize that maybe something that worked for you for 3 months, 4 months straight might not be working anymore. And so that's where it comes back to realizing, okay, one, am I doing the same thing over and over again and not getting results? 2, do I need someone who's an outside factor to look in and see what I'm doing and help me with what I'm doing? And so that's where all of those things come into play, having a coach, whatever it may be. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think just to, again, speak to I think people have heard a lot of this, like science about eating smaller, more frequent meals, improving metabolism. Jill, I believe that is generally debunked, because I think ultimately, again, as much as people want to fight this, when it comes to fat loss, it is about a caloric deficit. So it really matters. If you're eating 1 massive meal a day, or if you're eating 5 small meals, it's about how many calories you're taking in versus how many calories you're burning. So, like Rachel said, it's really ultimately at the end of the day, what you prefer, what you're going to stick to, what feels best for you. Because whichever way you set it up, if it seems unsustainable or ridiculous and you're thinking like, I can't wait till I get through this 3-month period, that's not, the approach that you want to take, right?
Yeah. And it all comes back to like those intermittent fasting things and things like that. Like if you feel like intermittent fasting and pushing your first meal off till, noon or something helps you adhere to your intake more, then do it. If you feel like you have that, meal at noon and you're like ravenous the rest of the day and you eat tons more, then maybe that's not the best idea. So it all comes back to, again, what you can adhere to and what makes you feel good in general.
Okay, hold on. I'm just going to, I think there's one other question here that we may. Okay, so no medical insurance. I'm afraid I may have some GI issues very similar to IBS, and hoping for some directions relating to lab tests you can obtain online. Are you super familiar with any online stuff?
Not really in terms of GI tests. I mean, like for hormones and stuff like that, the Dutch test, which you talked about with Gabrielle, I know that one is a really good one. But in terms of some of the other things, it's really, I don't know. I don't really have, it's more of like, you got to see a medical doctor in that sense.
Yeah. And I know there are quite a few, like stool sample tests you can set up, but I don't know in terms of like their
usually you have to have like a medical doctor.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm not sure that's really something we can speak to. And again, with the IBS or GI issues and digestive issues, that is such a complicated topic, not to like freak anybody out, but like, if you're saying I'm having some sort of IBS like symptoms, that could be related to so many things. That could be like one specific change in your diet. That could be stress. That could be hormonal. Like that could be so many things. So, I mean, it may be, I guess, a good place to start is just to like research some good online resources for like there's Dr. Michael Russo. You know about him, Rachel?
Yeah.
He's like a gut health doctor. I need to start making notes here because we got to put some stuff in the show notes. So Dr. Russo, you could check him out. Gut health person. What was the other thing that I wanted to put in the show notes? I forget already. Dr. Elly Michelle. Yeah, Dr. Elly. Okay.
And I would also say that sometimes like with testing, even when it comes to any sort of tests, I think it's important to test, but I also think that when you are getting, like I've seen people spend hundreds, not thousands of dollars on testing because they want to find the answer, when it really comes back to like, you have to treat the underlying cause. And even if you don't know the underlying cause, it usually comes back to what you're eating, the food you're eating, and testing out different things and starting with real food, right? And so if you're not eating real whole foods, that's the first place to start. Like get the junk and the processed stuff all out of there because that could be causing tons of GI stuff. Mm-hmm. And then past that, it could be you have some other underlying issues that maybe, you're sensitive to gluten or you're sensitive to, nightshades, eggs, whatever it may be. So it's working with someone to kind of find those as well. And maybe it's dairy or things like that. So I would say that it also, like, even if you get all this testing done, in my opinion, it's like, why don't you just start like looking at what could be the underlying cause of that rather than trying to get all these tests and find out, what's going on and all of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you can start, with an elimination diet sort of thing, like a Whole30 based situation, an autoimmune protocol, Whole30, which is even more strict, but getting rid of things like nightshades and dairy and eggs and like anything that is a common allergen or a common kind of issue, and just go super strict for a couple weeks and pay attention to how your body's reacting. And then you do the like sort of adding one thing back in at a time. And, it's a lot of work, but if you're experiencing gut distress, that's something that you probably want to put some thought into.
Or even the new elimination diet nowadays is carnivore, right? Because it's a lot more simple than saying I need to cut out this specific thing. If you can just, I'm not advocating that you just go complete carnivore, right? But it's a tool to use. And if you don't want to think about all these different things, then just maybe for a week you say, okay, I'm just going to eat meat and see how I feel. Mm-hmm. And then you introduce these things back in. It's an elimination. It's a form it's a form of an elimination diet, but it's one that I've seen work for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's super easy to adhere to generally, at least for a short period of time. We've got another friend here talking about eating pizza and then her period starting. Does anyone else have that issue? Okay, so literally once a month, I just feel the desire to eat chocolate. And then the next day, here we go. So literally like clockwork. I'm like, oh, I ate chocolate yesterday. Guess what? Period. So, yeah. I mean, but yeah, your body's telling you a lot of things, right? And you are I don't know if people have heard of, Rachel, have you heard of seed cycling? That kind of, yeah.
So I have a YouTube video. I have 2 YouTube videos where I go through them all actually.
Oh, good. Okay. Post that. Cause that's interesting. But for people who have like crazy cravings or who have a harder time with PMS, like some of us, have like little mild cramps and we're kind of a little maybe tired the day before. And some people have like really struggle. And there could be some things you could be doing nutritionally that really help. And even there's like approaches to working out during different times of your cycle and during the month, where maybe your estrogen's up or your progesterone's up or whatever, and it might speak more towards doing different types of movement and exercise and eating different things. And, you know, around your period, you want to be getting sort of like your iron and your red meat up if you can, and things like that. So there's like a lot you could get into. You could really nerd out on eating and exercising around your cycle. So, but yeah, you're definitely not the only person who wants to crush a pizza or a chocolate bar on the period.
100%. And also I would say definitely, so I talked a little bit about this on my podcast with Dr. Jaime Seeman, who is going to be coming on this week. She's going to be the live expert on Saturday. So I would say come on that live, ask this question, because she has a lot of great points that she'll answer and that she'll address there. So definitely ask her that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So going back to the carnivore thing, 3 months. Yeah. I mean, I definitely wouldn't recommend 3 months at the outset. There would be, I would say, like, again, some of it depends on what kind of issues you're experiencing, what your diet was before. Like, if you know you're sort of gonna be able to tolerate protein pretty well during that period. But like for me, again, going back to when I do my sort of carnivore resets, so this isn't an elimination diet, it's just to like recalibrating my body because I've been maybe traveling or I've been eating too much sugar or I've been having whatever issue. I'll literally do strict carnivore for 3 to 5 days. And if you're eating like a nice variety, right? So I don't go by the like only ground beef thing. You can if you want, but for me, it's a lot more sustainable and enjoyable if I'm eating fish, I'm eating chicken, I'm eating pork, I'm eating different cuts of beef, I'm doing all that stuff, bone broth, shellfish, whatever you want to eat that's protein, eggs. And I'll do just that to satiety. So I'm not counting any kind of macros. I have no idea how much fat or protein it is. I'm just eating the amount of meat that I want to eat at the time that makes me feel good. And I'll do that for 3 to 5 days. And then like the next day I might incorporate some avocado or maybe a salad or some like vegetables on the side. And then the next day, maybe I'll put my sweet potato back in or whatever. But unless you're dealing with something really intense, for most people, if you're just trying to like reset, see how your body's feeling, 3-5 days, maybe a week on the outset might be a good starting point and see how you feel.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would say, like, especially if it's your first time embarking on it, like no more than 5 days, because that just takes a mental toll on you. And you're like, wow, if I have 3 months, that's a lot. But like even a month, right? Even 2 weeks, it's just like mentally hard to wrap your head around that. And then, so you probably won't be as adherent as if you were like, okay, I only have to do this for 3 days. I can buckle down and eat meat for 3 days. And you have like a set end point right there. That in itself is going to switch in your brain and say, okay, I can do this for 3 days or 5 days. And that's something that we did a 5-day reset in my MetFlex tribe, like 3 months ago, back in January. And it was 5 days, and it was a 5-day like reset carnivore. Let's just do it and see how we feel. And even just after 5 days, so many of the women notice different things that with like sleep and digestion and things like that. And so it's just 5 days you can actually get a good amount of information out of just 3 to 5 days for sure.
Cool. Okay, we've got another question. I just want to say before we, because we're going to log off here in a minute unless anybody has any other questions. So if there's anything, obviously this is a topic that we could talk about forever, but if anybody has any specific questions about, sticking to a plan, sticking to a schedule, what do I do when all I want to do is eat cream eggs, like whatever. If you have any questions, ask them now before we sign off. But we've got another one here talking about hormonal testing kits. So in my chat with Gabrielle, and this is a kit that I actually have that I have yet to take, but it's one of the sort of like overall respected kind of tests that you take to check your hormones. It's called the Dutch test. You've heard of that, right, Rachel? Have you done that?
Yeah, I've taken it. I can actually, I have like an account to get them. I haven't set it up yet. So that's something that I can look into yes, I've done it before. Yeah.
And there's different ones too. There's like Dutch Plus and Dutch whatever, but it's a like basically a full hormonal panel. Again, you're going to need to send it to a medical professional. So you're gonna have to be connected with somebody like Gabrielle or your doctor or whatever who can take the results and interpret them for you. But that is one that you can do in the mail. Like you can order it, you do the little whatever, if you pee on a stick a couple times, however it works, and then you send it out and someone interprets and discusses it with you. So I have mine in my bathroom that I've been too lazy to do, but it's there, and I'm actually very interested in finding out the results. So that is one. I don't really know about any others because that's the one that always comes up to me. So look up the Dutch test if you're interested.
Yeah, that's like considered right now, it's considered the gold standard for hormone testing, because you do, like you said, you do dry urine tests throughout the day. And then if you get the Dutch Plus, you do like a blood test, dry blood test. I did it like over a year and a half ago, I think, or even 2 years. I don't know when it first had come out. But it gives you a good amount of information. There are some caveats to it in terms of like the time, like of your cycle, and taking it and things like that. You're supposed to take it around a certain time. I don't remember exactly. But we can look into it. It's all on the website, the Dutch test. You'll see that. But yeah, that would be probably the gold standard, just going off of like normal blood tests and some other testing that you might find on like online. It might not be like, usually those aren't as accurate as we want them to be. So right now the Dutch test is what I know of for hormone testing.
Okay, cool. All right, a couple more questions coming in. Track your macros. Do you just eyeball? I'm really in tune to the macros because it helps me have structure, but I feel like the mental state of doing so is unhealthy or monotonous. Okay. There's a lot of, with every question, it's always like, it depends, but we'll kind of give our 2 cents. But I have certainly tracked macros in the past, and I certainly have gone back to tracking macros if I'm feeling like, if I have a specific goal, which may be fat loss, or it may be that I've just been super lazy with my food for a while and I want to get back on track. I find it useful for me, again, temporarily. I'm like a big fan of doing nutritional protocols temporarily, because when you do something too long-term, you rely on it instead of relying on your heart and brain and gut and mind. And again, for every person that it works great for, because it gives you a feeling of understanding and control, it can feel unhealthy or obsessive for someone else. So you need to know what it's doing for you, right? It can work for a period of time and then it no longer works, and you need to honor that. If it is feeling unhealthy or monotonous to you, then what I would recommend, if you sort of feel like you're kind of dependent on it, is like, instead of this like 5-day carnivore, try like a week where you don't track your macros. Try to just eyeball it. Like, if you've been eating stuff that's strict enough that you're macro checking it, just try to eat exactly the same way for the next week, and don't put your macros in your app. Just eat, just look at it and just eyeball it, and have faith in yourself that you know what you're doing. You know what approximately your like 5 to 7 ounce or whatever protein is, if you know, right? So just try it out. And if it feels good to you and it feels like, oh, I don't have to put this stupid thing in my macro counter after every meal, and that's like a relief to you, amazing. And then you're sort of empowered to not have to do it. And it's still there. It's still a tool you can use if you need it. But I think people lose sight sometimes of like the point of it all. Like, again, if you have to be super strict for a specific reason and that's your way of tracking, okay. But for most of us who are just trying to be healthy and have a good relationship with food, like, do you need to be tracking your macros every day? You know what I mean? Just ask the question. Like, that's kind of my feeling about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, like you said, it all comes back to the individual and also what your goal is. So if you have a strict goal, I think that the more aware you can be of what you're consuming, that is very important. But then it also comes back to the person. So for me, I have been like, I went through a period of time, like I go through periods of time, like years of tracking, years of not tracking. Recently, over the last year and a half, I've been tracking my macros diligently, because for me, I found that it just having that structure there and just knowing, it gives me comfort, right? And so I've gone through periods where maybe I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little bit too crazy, but I know, like, mentally, I know that, right? And so, like, if I go on vacation, I'm not going to be tracking my macros and trying to estimate all these things on vacation. That's the time where I'm like, all right, it's cool. Like, I'm not going to go over crazy and like eat all the stuff that I don't like know that's not good for me and stuff like that. But it's a time where I'm like, all right, this is a planned break for me. This is, I'm not going to track now, but on a normal basis, especially for me right now with a specific goal in mind, for me, it gives me structure. It gives me a sense of control. but it all comes back to the person. Like you said, if you feel like it's monotonous and you're getting out of control and it's mentally harming you, then maybe you need to take a break. But if you feel like you're going through your day and it's adding awareness to it, it's part of your habits, right? And it's part of your structure, then I personally think that it's not something that's quote unquote bad. I think that the issue with macros is where it comes to the very, very heavy part of flexible dieting. So I think macros got a very bad rap in terms of if it fits your macros, right? Where you're trying to fit in like this Snickers bar here and this, like you're going through the day and you're playing, I call it macro Tetris, right? Where you're trying to plug in all these different things and see what foods you can eat to hit your specific macros. With that, I would say that is its whole other discussion and I do not advocate that. But if you're tracking your macros, and for me, it's like I plan my day ahead of time. So like I don't even necessarily track, I guess, throughout the day because I've already planned it. Obviously, I have it in my tracker. It's planned there. So I'm going to eat what's in there, but it gives me control. It gives me that structure, which in a sense gives me that freedom. So
yes. Yeah, I mean, I consider metabolic flexibility a healthier approach to if it fits your macros. Like I roll my eyes at all this, hashtag IIFYM on social media because so much of it is dudes with six packs who talk about how they can eat cereal and Pop-Tarts all day. And it's like, yeah, maybe you can, but we're also losing track of what's the most important thing, having a six pack and eating your Pop-Tart or being healthy and eating healthy food. And I think metabolic flexibility is the better approach because it's still not demonizing food. It's not saying you can never fit this into your macros or you shouldn't, or if you do, you're gross or whatever. It's just saying like, have a resilient, healthy body so that when you go on vacation and you drink too much, or when you have an Easter holiday and eat a lot of chocolate, like it's fine because most of the time you're eating nourishing whole foods and your body can burn fat and your body can burn carbs and you can do all of those things. So I think, again, it just goes back to with the tracking, like there's some people commenting here, I use it when I'm feeling out of control, and you've echoed that too. It's a tool. It's not your identity. It's not a thing you have to do to eat properly. It's a tool that you can use when you want to use it.
Yeah. And also realize that too, that like what you mentioned with the different, and you talked about this with Gabrielle about protein, and like not everything that you put, even if you're tracking to the T or you believe you are, there's still going to be variances in the different foods you're eating. So that's why I think that if it fits your macros type approach is so off, because it's like protein doesn't do the same thing in your body as carbs and fats do, right? We know that from our discussion a few days ago. So even if you're tracking that protein, it might be a little bit different than what you think is happening. So you have to be aware of that. And we could go on and on about this. But
we could go on and on about everything. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good one. So Tiffany says, I started on meal plans, but find it hard to stick with them because my lunches are always leftovers. Breakfasts are pretty simple. Is there a planner out there where I can have more ability to customize while still meeting my whole food macro goals? So Rachel, you can speak to this too. I will post something I actually got from a friend of mine the other day that is like this really cool healthy food matrix. And a lot of these things exist out there. Rachel, you might have one too that you can post, but it's basically sort of like this awesome matrix of like protein, like, I don't know, healthy carbs, fats, spices, whatever. And it kind of just shows like, pick one thing from everything and there's a billion different combinations and there you go. But I think like speaking to what she's saying, like there's sort of a monotony and a boredom and like, I'm eating the same thing and all these leftovers. Why can't I do something else? I think that this is the time to be a little bit creative with things that kind of tweak without completely upending your routine, right? So I personally, maybe it's like a throwback from like bodybuilding thing because I have like a really eclectic palate and I love to eat everything, but I'm also kind of cool with eating like the same things over and over again when the situation calls for it. So I don't like, for example, like I could eat eggs and avocado every day for every meal for the rest of my life, or chicken thighs and sweet potato for every day. But I like to mix things up. And I think one way to do that, if you are being cognizant of like not wasting food and eating your leftovers and trying to stick to like a relatively small base of healthy foods, that's where condiments come in. That's where spices come in. That's where different cooking methods come in. We just talked about that. That's our challenge today, is like post something different, like something that's in your pantry that you never use, and figure out how to use it. Because we want to encourage some creativity and different thinking without having to go completely off the rails. So like for me, one of the things that I did recently that like changed my healthy food game is I bought an air fryer. You and I were talking about this air fryer the other day. Like, it's so awesome.
Yeah.
Because I want these like crispy sweet potatoes, and I want like chicken thighs with crispy skin, and I could never make that in the oven. Like I can cook them in the oven, but they're, sweet potato fries don't, So I bought this air fryer, and now in like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I make all these delicious things super easy, and they're crispy, and I'm not adding a bunch of oil to them or whatever. And so that's kind of switched up what was maybe getting a little boring in my routine. I made it delicious. And we've got women talking in the post today about adding kind of cool spices or different like condiments and stuff. And you can add like little things that completely change things up. So if you make a salad, if you like prep a salad for the week and you're like, this is boring as hell, add a different nut to it, add a different fruit to it, like make your own salad dressing and add something spicy with the olive oil, like, stuff like that can kind of make little tweaks without taking up a ton more time. Anyway, that's my recommendation.
No, I agree. And I think two things with this, when it comes to meal plans and when I posted those meal plans, they're sample meal plans, right? They're supposed to, what I found over the years, like working with clients, is like, there's some people who come to me and they want me to write them an exact meal plan that says, eat this now. And it's hard because you can follow that for a little bit, and then you're just like, okay, like I'm just going to go back to what I know and feel and, eat. And obviously it depends on like where you're starting, all of that. But I would say that with the meal plans, you want to make sure that you're using them as a sample to get ideas. And if you feel like you have to just stick to them like completely, I think that sets yourself up for failure because it's a sample meal plan. I think it's a good starting place, but we all kind of go back to our go-to foods. Hopefully they're, healthy, good foods, not like Pop-Tarts and stuff. But so I think you need to kind of sit back and say, okay, what do I feel good with? And how can I, like you said, take these simple things and mix them up a little bit? Another thing I would say is also, if you feel like you're bored with what you're eating in your meal plan, instead of going out and trying to find like 5 different recipes to make for this week, choose one thing that you're going to switch up. So for me personally, actually, the last few weeks, I usually stick to the same just meats and veggies and things like that. And I've noticed like the last 2 weeks, I've just kind of been getting like kind of turned off from that a little bit. I don't know if it's like the situations we're in, or I've just been doing it I haven't been going out to dinner, because usually I go out and have like a nice meal somewhere else at, on the weekends or something like that. So I haven't been doing that. So I would say pick one thing. For me, I actually made a stuffed, it's like a random, just took everything that I had in my fridge, not everything, but I made like a stuffed pepper casserole. So I never make casseroles, right? But this week I was like, okay, I'm going to have something different for lunch. I'm going to pick one new recipe to make and have that for lunch throughout the week. So I made this big like stuffed pepper casserole, which just is meat and veggies, like a bunch of stuff I had in my freezer, some like tomato, like canned tomatoes, just some spices, bunch of stuff. I can post the recipe I haven't tasted it yet, so hopefully it's good.
Right.
Yeah, I'll post that recipe, but I would say don't get too crazy with trying to like find all these new recipes for this 1 week. Like choose one thing, maybe 1 or 2 new recipes, because with that, you're going to start to make things a little bit more complicated for yourself. And that's going to add to stress, right? And it's going to just, it's going to be too much from experience with myself and with clients. So choose one thing that you're going to change up, and also realize that like you don't want it to be, if you do have a specific goal in mind, keeping it simpler is usually the best option. So trying to get super fancy with new ingredients and new types of foods can actually add to more overeating and things like that. So
yeah. No, that's a really good point. It's like the whole paralysis by analysis thing people talk about. They're like, if I can't go from 0 to 100 and change everything, I'm not going to do anything, or I'm just going to freak out in the midst of it. It's like just one step, and then Next week you take another step, and then next week you take another step. That's the whole point of this like 3-week challenge, right? Next week we're going to be talking about fitness. We can still talk about food, but we're making these like little progressive changes that make a big difference over time. Okay, so one last question, and then we're going to get going. I appreciate everybody who's been commenting. We're reading all of them, and we appreciate you guys. Jill is asking about intuitive eating. So I don't know about these names. I don't know specifically who these people are, but of course I've heard about and discussed intuitive eating for sure. And that's I don't know, it's kind of like an interesting sort of catch-all term, because what exactly does it mean? I mean, we know what intuitive means. It means you don't have to follow maybe specific rules and macro checking, and you get to this point where you can just really like listen to your body, I suppose, and your body's signals and what you need versus what you're just like feeling like, or what someone else is telling you to eat. And I think it's one of those things where in general terms, of course, that's where we all want to get to, right? We want to get to the point where we know our body so well that we can honor what it needs and just know what it needs, right? And a lot of times, well, I mean, I am there sometimes, and then sometimes I'm not. And sometimes, like I've joked about this intuitive eating thing before, because I'm like, look, if I just listen to my body, going back to the Pop-Tarts thing again, I just be eating chocolate all the time because my body's telling me that I want chocolate. So, but is that your stress telling you that? Is that your emotions telling you that? Is it the fact that you know you have chocolate in your cupboard telling you that? So intuitive eating is a great concept, but a lot of people need to do a lot of work to get there, and you can fall off of that concept and come back to it. And so it's complicated. But I mean, it's a great concept for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I used to think too, I used to be like, okay, the end goal should be intuitive eating, right? That should be, you know, if I'm going tracking macros and things like that, like I want to eventually get to intuitive eating. And I think that in itself is a good concept. But I think that with the world we live in and all of the foods that we have access to now, and the way that our food is made and all of that. So obviously, if you're avoiding processed foods as much as possible, things like that. But like you said too, it's like even, you know, your body telling you like, or your mind telling you, I want chocolate, or I want this. It's like, it's not always, you know, it's your brain can play tricks on you, and your brain is kind of rewired to not even know what is intuitive anymore.
Right.
So that is where the issues come into place with this subject of intuitive eating. There's actually, I have this book here that I'm almost done-ish reading. It's called The Hungry Brain.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I have a podcast interview with him. I'll add it to
really?
I'll add it to the file.
Add that.
Great.
Because this is an amazing book. It gets in a little sciencey, but there are like a lot of major takeaways, and it kind of talks about the history of food and how our brains have developed and all of that. And so I think this is a really good resource. This, and I would say in terms of just wrapping this whole live up, the book Atomic Habits. Have you read that one? That's an awesome book, especially during a time like, I mean, I would say like right now, like a lot of the stuff that you will learn in that book, you can begin to implement now. I would say like, I'm thankful that I read it, you know, a few months ago, because it actually really helped me with this time that I'm in right now and building on the habits that I've already started to build on. And like we said in the beginning of this, it's like having those habits in place. That's what we turn back to when we're in times of stress and the unknown and all of that. But if you haven't read the book Atomic Habits, that's an awesome book too.
Awesome. All right, guys, we've made it through another hour very quickly, as usual. You can always count on us to be able to talk for a long time. So we're going to put a couple of these things that we've talked about in the comments of this call. And just a reminder, obviously, anybody who didn't get to watch it all, or, you know, this will live on the page, so you can go check it out. We've got a couple more challenges going on this week. Then we're going to get back on live on Thursday to give out some prizes, talk about the fitness week, you know, just more excitement coming. So that's it. Anything else you want to add before we jump off?
Not really. I mean, I would just say continue sharing, even if it's not part of like the challenge of the day. If you're doing something that you're like, oh, wow, this is helping me, or I think this would maybe help some other women in the group, just share it. It doesn't have to be the challenge of the day or anything like that. But yeah, just share it. Let us know. And if there's a struggle that you're struggling with, share that as well, because I've seen some people posting some things that they're struggling with. And some other people have been posting, responding things that they're doing. So that's what this whole group is about, just supporting each other.
Yeah. And this common struggle is where this conversation came from, because I was like, everybody's dealing with the exact same thing. So let's chat about it.
Yeah.
All right, ladies, thank you so much. Thank you, Rachel, as always. And I'll see you again on Thursday when we do this again.
Sounds good.
All
Have a
right.
good day.